long journey, and I'm proud to call my friend, a noted author and grief support advocate, R.Glenn Kelly.
So when we go back to work, it is going to be difficult. When I do some of the workshops on grief in the workplace for businesses, I give them my example. I was a director in a company, and I love being a director. I was so great at that name. I just did what a director does. I just directed. That was my job. I just directed. I had 20 managers. And my day was like this. I got my cup of coffee and I sat down at my desk, and one by one, 20 managers would stop by my door and go, "Good morning, Ron, I'm doing this. Good morning, Ron, I'm doing this. Good morning, Ron, I'm doing this." And it might not be everybody's business model, but it worked well for me. Well, what happened when I returned to work after the loss of John? Nobody came by my door anymore. I'll tell you a little bit about myself so that you know why I'm standing before you and how I've come to stand before you. I am first and foremost the father of Jonathan Taylor Kelly, an amazing young man that was born in 1997 with a medical condition known as hypoplastic left heart syndrome. That meant that he was born without the left side of his heart. It failed. It atrophied within the womb, and the day he was born, they handed him to me and said he will not make it through the night.
Quote was, "Grief is a feeling like being in a tunnel, but with no end in sight."
Exactly.
How do you categorize it?
Well, and a lot of the work that I enjoy doing, what really gives me the gratitude is allowing others to realize that there is an end. With the grief, there's never going to be a complete healing to it. We'll never heal completely, nor do we want to heal completely. There's parts of that grief that we always want to hold on to, that longing and sorrow for your child or your spouse. But there is a move forward. There's what we call the new normal, or a new blueprint for your life. So a lot of what I get so much satisfaction out of is actually talking with others and letting them realize there is a plan for your life. There's a purpose beyond this catastrophic loss. I want to let anybody be aware of what it feels like to be you. I think you can agree that's the same ship that we're all on together. The waves still come, and guess what we do now? We grab on, we take a breath, and we let that wave hit us. Especially, and again, I'll paint it from a man's point of view, but when a tragedy happens, a trauma happens, we want to find blame. We want a reason. We want to know why. Sometimes it actually gives into false guilt as well. We'll find guilt in ourselves because we just want something to be at fault for what happened. In my case, my child passed away in a hospital. So my initial reaction was to be angry at the hospital. I did many things to dissolve that myself and realize that was false anger. But in my mind at the time, it was a good reason to be angry. Now, before I go any farther, we're going to spend some time in this workshop, and this is a workshop. This is interactive, okay? I don't want to sit up here and just talk for an hour and 15 minutes and not have somebody come back or be willing to ask questions, because I'm going to ask you to ask questions. But as I go through this, make sure that you're willing to bring it up. But I figured out a point for all of us, both men and women, is that we're all different, right? We're all as unique as snowflakes and fingerprints. I think we do that for a reason. And as we go through the book, and as I go through some of the workshops like the one that I've done here, we lay that out. And we just want people to know that men and women are grieving equally. It's just we don't understand it at first. Once we understand it, we're much better.
I've heard it said that women grieve face to face and men grieve shoulder to shoulder.
And that's exactly right, because women are far more empathetic and they need to survey the feelings of other people, where men need to go hide in a cave sometimes. And if we just understand that, we're so much better.
What about the difference, though? The grief that men experience as opposed to women?
Right, and I think we'd mentioned the old men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And part of my studies that I went through, I realized I've renamed that entirely to When Planets Collide, because there is such a difference.
That'll be book 4.
Yes, but men, of course, are more internal, and women are more external. Women tend to actually show the grief, where men grieve equally, we just grieve internally versus on the outside. I knew I was not going to lay on anybody's couch and spit out my mind and tell them what I was going through. It just was not in my egotistical structure, if it were. But I would do what? I'd read books, right? That's the male thing. If all else fails, read the manual. Well, all else had failed, so I went for the manual. And the manual wasn't out there. Workplace is extra hazardous because everybody knows it, we spend more awake time at the workplace with the people we work with than we spend at home with our loved ones. So we take that as a place of safety a lot of times. And when we go back there, we're actually looking for safety, but now we find people avoiding us. So one of the things I try to teach business leaders is, without violating any HIPAA laws and trying to be as respectful as possible, one of the key things that I want them to do is kind of get the teams together and go over the loss story. Because what happens is you return to work and you've got 50 people that are going to approach you and ask you what happened. Tell me about it. And you're going to relive that trigger time after time after time after time when you go to work and retell that story. If we can get to the employers beforehand and let them know, hey, it's okay to go ahead and let everybody in a general sense know what happened, and please don't approach them and say, tell me about it. Does that make sense? Together, we have all been through the same fire and we understand each other. And to listen to the tenor out there and talk about troubled seas plays right into something that I go out and I teach those that haven't been through what we have been through. Because we have been through something that only together can we relate to. And I try to relate it to them. I'm going to tell you now how I relate it. There's no way in my male ego was I going to lay on anybody's couch. But I will read a book.
Yes.
So I went out looking for books, and there were none available. There were books out there for women and for siblings and for, I hate to be funny, but for pets. Mm-hmm. There were none out there that were directly targeted towards men. So I had to do my own clinical research on the difference in the way men express their emotions and how women express their emotions, and then bring it back into what I've observed in myself and other men throughout my life. Those discoveries led me into the fact that part of my legacy towards my son was to share those with other men. When I was finished at that point with so many aha moments, and now I understand, I came out with 2 decisions. The first one was, I'm okay. And I want to pass it on to everybody in this room about yourselves. There's a lot of us that can say that. Raise your hand and say, I'm okay. I understand that I'm going through this, but I'm okay.
Now, Ronald's written a book called The Grief Case, and I want him to talk a little bit about it because I love the idea. We got a case full of stuff going on after grief, right?
We do indeed. And I don't think anybody can deny that when we lose somebody, and I say, and if you visualize this, somebody has handed you a grief case, and it's usually somebody that you don't know, unfortunately, because you've lost that loved one. And that's a case that you are going to carry around with you for the rest of your life. You're never going to be without your grief. And when you first get it, it's heavy and it's confusing and it's burdensome. All the files inside are made up of all the different emotions that are inside grief. We all go through them, whether it's anger, hate, loneliness, sadness, all those different emotions. And as they remain confusing, it gets in your way in life. It really does, because we know we all want to move forward, but in order to do that, you have to start working through those files and processing them. And as you process those files, the grief case gets lighter.
Okay, what's the quickest way I can start processing?
Realize that those emotions, sometimes they overlap each other, sometimes they belong in individual files and not 5 sets of emotion in 5 different files, and start putting them together and realizing that they are different emotions.
So you can file it away and organize your grief case.
We're not healed, we're on our way, and things have started to soften a bit. But now we want our child remembered. Now we want our husband or wife remembered. Now we want our mother or father remembered. And we want people to start talking about them and bring them up. And my reference to the friend who had emailed me is thank you for the gift, because it used to bring pain, and now it's a little gift every time I hear somebody talking about my son.
Brings a smile to your face.
It does, and a warmth to my heart.
Yeah, warm to your heart.
Just think of it this way. Gender really is what we're talking about, how masculine or how feminine you are. And each of us can reside on that spectrum of masculine or feminine at different ways, including crossing over into the what is known to be the opposite sex gender. Does that make sense to everybody? Because we will talk to somebody. I could talk to somebody in this room who is married who will say, my husband cried like a baby and I didn't cry. Right? That's because in their gender, they were at one place on the spectrum that we thought that they weren't going to be. Now, does that make sense to everybody? I don't want it to be too dry. You know, and I was an executive in a business. I get this. I mean, we're not nonprofit organizations. We're for-profit organizations. And, you know, productivity is profit and productivity is boots on the ground, and we need our people back. So therefore, we're driven back to work earlier. In this country, sadly, the average is 3 days of bereavement leave for a good company. Department of Labor does not regulate days off in any way, shape, or form for vacation, holidays, any of that. FMLA is the only thing that they even get involved with when it comes to time off. So, you know, a good company might say, listen, we'll give you 3 days of bereavement leave. We will give you maybe your unused vacation days that you've got, and then take the rest of the time off unpaid that you need. But how long can even a modest bank account survive without being filled in, you know, every 2 weeks? So we're going to have to go back to work, and that's got to drive us to probably go in before we're ready.